All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the April 11th, 2025 working group meeting. To start off things this morning, we'll go into our new membership. Now they're not on the list, but this morning joining us for the first time is Raquel Farinaegra. Raquel, would you like to introduce yourself to the group and let folks know who you are and what brings you here?
Yeah, of course. I don't know if you're listening to me.
Yep, we can hear.
Uh, Thanks, Daniel, for the introduction. I joined the Robotic Working Group from recommendation from Andrew Lement from Chariot Command, who introduced me to Dan Woods. And I'm a trade advisor for the Economic and Commercial Office of Spain in Ottawa. We are a branch of the Embassy of Spain, and what we're trying to do right now is we're organizing a business summit on AI and critical infrastructures and cybersecurity. We don't have an exact date yet, but it is bound to happen between mid October to mid November, between those dates in Toronto. And we're mapping the Canadian AI environment in order to see whether there'll be companies interested in participating in the event. If you're interested in having a private meeting with me, I'll throw my email into the chat if that's okay with you, Dan. Or
Yep, absolutely. That'd be great.
hey, thank you so much, and hope hope to meeting you all in the future. And I'll let you do the talking right here, Dan. Thank you so much for. Uh,
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I see that Brennan D'Souza is on the call. Brennan, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Brendan D'Souza, and I'm the founder of Skyarc. I'm a former founder with a recent exit, so that was in the sports tech space. But I've been working on another venture for the past year in stealth with the University of Singapore, providing solar drones that provide a kind of like a shade, a dynamic shade over regions. And we've been working on prototypes for the past, year. We feel like we're at a point where we can take this to commercialization. And so I'm trying to join and learn off this ecosystem in general, the movers and the shakers, who's doing what on this side of the border and down south as well. And I thought this would be a great spot to start. So I reached out to Joe, and he gave me a recommendation to join this group, and I'm happy to be here and learn as much as I can.
Excellent. Thanks for joining, Brendan. We're happy to have you.
Thanks.
Um, I believe that's everyone I can see from the agenda this week. However, is there anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to introduce themselves to the group before who'd like to say hello?
I can go there too, and I'm just about to run out here to Guelph. But Dr. Sherry Vandeful, founder and CEO of Catalytics, know quite a few people on this call, and just excited to yeah be part of my first egg robotics working group. Although we don't work in robotics, we work in innovation. They still the two are still pretty close side by side.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Sherry. Happy to have you here.
Thank
Oh, yeah. Anybody else would like to introduce themselves before we move into our presentation? No? All right, perfect. If that's the case, then I will turn things over to Xavier from Picketa, who's going to be presenting today, giving us some updates and letting us know what's what.
Hey Dan, thank you for the opportunity. And I'm wondering just how much time do we have?
Uh, we got lots of time. You can take 20 to 30 minutes. If you can fill that.
Yeah, that's good. I'm not sure if I can fill 30 minutes, but I have, I guess, 6 major updates for things we're doing here at Picketa. Tried to not just do, I think most people here have heard kind of our pitch, what we're trying to do, but quickly, Picketa is doing real-time plant tissue analysis. Our goal is to make sure that every farmer can have their nutrient concentrations on hand when they need it. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, right now specializing in potatoes and corn, and we just add canola, which is one of the updates. So I wanted to walk through more just data from this past year. The most important, interesting part, especially if you're into tech and everything. So I have some new data from we did corn trials in 13 states last year and across Canada. I have a couple of case studies from those, kind of showing for the tissue analysis, how does it compare with regular methods, like the traditional lab. I have a announcement that we did a couple weeks ago on canola and going into Western Canada, which might be interesting for folks. And a one for Ontario specifically. We just got to work with Foresight on the Next Gen Nitrogen Challenge, which we're starting to organize across Ontario, which would be very relevant for some folks here. And then I did want to check in back with one of the features we added, which kind of goes with the Next Gen Nitrogen. We have a project going down at in a new continent as well, which I might go over. So I more have a collection of new things and updates, and I'd love to go through them. And then if there's any question, please stop me. Would love to kind of dive more deeper into any part of it. So does that sound like a plan?
Yep, that sounds great.
Perfect. I'll just share my screen here. And again, raise your hand, ask any questions if you have it. Yeah. So for 2024, we did over 2,000 tissue tests in corn, and we're able to retrain. So every year we're retraining models based on data we have. So our system recognizes the nutrient value of your crop by looking at the leaf tissue texture through multiple wavelengths. Yeah, so we have our kind of new data model here. We've done a dozen states in the US, a couple of different sites in Canada, as well as some in Chile, which we're pretty excited to show. And I can send this to folks later on. But yeah, just to give an update, we're kind of going through a process of just making everything a bit more formal with our processes of what's a mature model and not. So to resume, yeah, we're looking at the leaf structure, training an AI to get the chemical composition, both through near infrared, but also visible. We have bandwidth from 300 to 1700 nanometers, which is quite a wide range on the lens right now. And yeah, we kind of broken it down into 4 stages. So if we're just brand new to a crop, brand new to a nutrient, we're kind of establishing a protocol. Then once we have the initial calibration, it's kind of going through the process of getting a consistent scan going into the models, which usually happens around a couple hundred samples. Then initial release is where I would say canola is right now, which we can go see later on, where we've done at least 2 projects in 2 different regions with at least 500 samples total. And that's typically where we see the initial release stage, where we can cover about 80% of the situations out there, and we can identify which one of those 20s do we need to kind of send to the lab, look more into as we kind of deploy the model. And then once we have kind of a mature model, that's where 99%, 95% of cases out there, we can do a reading without kind of seeing an outlier. And this is all based on, between labs, like what's the variance there? I'll maybe pull up project that we did. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So we're not trying to match every sample, lab sample one-to-one. We're trying to make a consistent tool that agronomists can and farmers can see their data in. So this was a kind of illuminating part of it of, what standard does it need to be? What difference does it need to be within the lab? So we did a project with the McCains at their Farm of the Future in 23, looking at what was the difference between two tissue samples taken in the same spot, and realized that, these are kind of the worst offenders for nitrate, phosphorus, and potassium. But even from, 1 meter against each other, 250 samples, what was the average difference? For those three, there were, closer to 20% than anything else. So if we're able to get the difference on average with the lab under 20%, ideally under 10%, we're kind of doing well within variance within a single lab. So then we think about doing, we're in a bunch of different states. We're in the UK, we're in other projects. If we can standardize the data, that's also another value add, because the difference in between labs is even higher than that. So this is kind of what we're going up against. And when we talk to farmers, there's 3 reasons why people don't tissue test. One is the timeliness of it. If you're waiting a week, if you're waiting a couple days, you're just getting your data late. And especially when the use case is for your application, that 2 weeks, you're in a different crop stage, the data gets less and less relevant. The second is it's operationally pretty difficult to bag tag, ship off samples, especially if you're not around the lab. Folks in Ontario have it a bit easier with, the best labs in Canada are kind of around that London area. And then the third would be the cost of like a per sample. If you're paying $50 USD, kind of limits the number of samples. So we're trying to make it faster, cheaper, and more efficient to take tissue tests. And if we can get it under 20%, ideally 10% difference on average, we see that kind of as a win. So just a bit of prep. This year, this is kind of the different spots we took tissue tests, both with different universities, with different contract researchers, but mostly with agronomy clients that were testing the system out. So yeah, this is kind of the matrix we're using right now for the model categorization. And then we have kind of the values here for the different difference mean. So average difference between the lens results of this model versus the lab results. And this is over the whole data set. So on average, the difference mean was 1.93%. That's more of like a if there's a bias to overestimate and underestimate. And then if we look at that plus the standard deviations, we can see how much it ranges into it. So what we want to see is a spike around 0, meaning that, the closer we get to that, the closer that it is to consistent results. But overall, we're pretty happy with these models here. So we'd say that nitrogen kind of is a mature model. So we're kind of just, formalizing the process a little bit, being able to showcase these kind of results. And we can walk through kind of the data. Of course, some nutrients are easier to estimate than others. Nitrogen, for example, is a lot easier to estimate than when we would look at boron, for example, which is like parts per million. Won't look at each one. Interestingly enough, potassium has proven to be the hardest one. I think there's something in potassium we just haven't figured out just yet. So we're kind of looking more into that for this upcoming year, before the season, going through the data. Is there something we missed? But yeah. And yeah, if there's any questions on kind of the data, I know there's a bunch of technical folks here, so. Let's walk through them. And like I said, I can share this later on. But yeah, our ranking of the models here would be, nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, copper. Those ones were the best performing one. And then for zinc, magnesium, potassium, further calibration is kind of going. So we also want to be, as transparent as possible with where the data models are, which nutrients can you, really are ready for, detailed research trials, which one are we still going? And the whole point of, Picketa, what we're doing is that we're getting 10 times more data basically every year. So as we're going, we're getting more and more data. This is pretty abstract though. So what we did was for regions, one for Ontario and one for Kansas. We retrained the model without any data from that territory to look at how would the model perform in a new region, like any no none of the validation data from that region was used for this case study, and I think it gives a better sense of kind of what to expect. So we have the before the season and after the season. This one was in Kansas. So for nitrogen preseason, or like the model from 33, which we trained kind of up to that initial release stage, we're around 22% on average, so a little higher than what we'd say would be, mature. And then for this case study, without having any data from Kansas, the average difference was around, a bit higher than 15%.
Kansas.
Yeah, on average. Similar for phosphorus, we got that down to 15% for this case study. For potassium, this is what I'm mentioning, where most of the data is kind of clustering towards the zero, meaning that there isn't any percent difference at all. Whereas potassium here, you kind of need to look a bit deeper because it seems there's a offset. With sulfur here, 13%, very good. Magnesium, and I'd love to hear from if folks have any questions or, I guess, reactions or things. Calcium
That's
too, we did a
awesome.
big jump here. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say those look like pretty good numbers that you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Absolute. If you're looking at mean absolute error, then it should be a little bit skewed, right? Because if you don't take the absolute value, you'll have some positives and negatives, right? So you'd expect it to be offset from zero.
Yeah, exactly. It's what we're looking for is like a consistent calibration where, even with this potassium graph, we've seen a huge improvement kind of from last year to this year, and it kind of validates the approach we're taking, which is getting more and more data with the best spectrometers possible right on the leaf. We can get a correlation for basically all the nutrients you would get from like the lab tissue test. With that exception of potassium, which we got to dig a bit deeper into it. Yeah, similar to boron. And if you think of boron, how small these micronutrients are within the plant, overall, I think it's pretty cool. But of course, I'm pretty biased on it.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So obviously, for this kind of tech and pretty much any tech, you look at like performance by the numbers, and you want to have as low error as possible, as high accuracy as possible.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, how many growers are going to look at the exact number necessarily, right? So what I'm wondering is, do you guys have a way to judge, like, when is good enough? Like, is there particular, like, are there scenarios where underestimating the nitrogen is worse than overestimating it? And, well, why are you going to use these numbers? Well, you're going to use them to do X, Y, or Z. So therefore, just knowing you're in the high level or the medium or the low level is all you care. Or, the most important thing is being accurate when we're below 10%. Like, you know what I mean? I'm wondering, do you guys have like that kind of roadmap to understand how to judge the results versus just chasing lower and lower and lower error?
Yeah, that goes kind of to the usability. So what we're trying to do is separate the kind of data reports with kind of marketing and usability. Because it'd be easy to us to say like, oh, we get data in real time in 1 minute versus, a week. And we do that in marketing because, that's a big value prop. But when it comes to the data analysis, what we've seen with agronomists is they want to see this. They want to see kind of the raw data, kind of in the hardest comparison possible, which is, let's do a blind direct case study on a new region. Once we're second year into a region, I've seen the fields before. Of course, it's easy to estimate there. The hard part is, profiling enough corn that any cornfield you go into, you're able to get these kind of numbers. So, and you were asking about, what's the standards for the different maturity levels, and this is kind of what we came up with. For this year, this is still ongoing. We're asking folks all the time, how can we better rank and compare it? But yeah, no, that's a great point where most, especially broadacre farmers, don't tissue test at all or do like a rescue sample. So just from the usability angle of being able to get, instead of one data point in one part of the field, maybe we can sample 4 times our cornfield, 4 key steps at multiple times, and you can see the variance between them. That's the frequency of data is pretty important, especially for tissue tests, especially the timeliness of it. So if we're able to show this correlation and like on a direct comparison plus those benefits, that's where we see kind of the value overall. But I have another one here on also corn, but this would be a folks from Ontario. So this would be Ontario data directly, which we didn't have Ontario data in this blind data set, but we did have some from New Brunswick. So not sure how similar they are, but it was a new blind region. But similar, we're seeing consistency on, average difference with nitrogen 15%. What we'll be focusing on would be more the outliers. Next is, getting, it's harder to improve that mass right next to 0, which has very little error. It's more interesting to look at those others that are further down. Are they, different varieties of corn? Is there are they early, are they late? Are they, when we look at our data set, do we have only data on really high magnesium corn? These are all things we're trying to kind of fill out as we go. But yeah, pretty similar results overall than the other one. Did a bit better in potassium in Canada than we did in that Kansas one. Funny thing is they were testing potassium, so sometimes that happens. So, but yeah, we're trying to be, as transparent with the data as possible. So I thought it'd be good to share with you guys. Absolutely did great on magnesium here. Yeah, 3% average difference between the lens and the lab on magnesium in Ontario in 24. I'd call that a pretty big win. And boron here a bit higher, but still a big jump from last year. So we'll see how much we can get with just brute force, just getting as much data as possible, but the models still are improving. So we'll keep on it. And iron here a bit higher. Copper here, 2% as well. Then we do have some, so that was the first update, was just sharing some of the corn data. If there's any question on that, let me know. But we want to do the same thing in our next crop. So we started in potatoes. The potato models are kind of looking very similar to the corn models. They're both at, on 3,000 validated samples with the lab. With canola, we did 2 sites, both in New Brunswick and in Chile, looking at mostly hybrid canola. So we do have some model here. They're a bit earlier on, kind of goes through the same process. And then, yeah, with nitrogen, I think the most promising thing is that we're seeing a similar trend in most the 3 crops that we're releasing this year. And I did want to add some onion data today, but we're still not fully done with the training of the models. We're assuming it'll be similar to these canola metrics though in terms of maturity. But we just need to a bit more time on that because we had to match all the samples and we need to clean the data set quite a bit. So I will share those once we do get it. But yeah, for the canola here, of course, some will be better than the other. Sulfur here needs quite a bit of work. Potassium, actually not that bad, which is interesting. So 4 different crops for different nutrients are easier or harder. But yeah, the approach we're taking of just taking as much data as possible seems to be, working, and especially with the other value crops. So we'll have some more case studies on canola here. Here's kind of quick summary. Most of the models are kind of between that initial release, initial calibration phase. We don't have any mature ones yet. But how we interpret that is it's ready for kind of trial testing, and we have a trial coming up in Saskatchewan and Alberta. So if you know any canola growers in Saskatchewan and Alberta, we'll be piloting 2 systems with the Cargill retail locations there. So we just announced this, I think it was last month. So I know this group is a lot more Ontario focused, but we're trying to spread the word. Did a full kind of press release here. Just going through, kind of sharing the data. The one in Alberta will be in cameras, and the one in Saskatchewan, we haven't, figured out the exact location yet, but it's probably going to be central Saskatchewan. So lots of canola to go and sample, and same thing where we see a huge jump when we release it to the network of lenses. So last year we had 30 or so agronomists using the lens. This year we're hoping to, more than double that. And then everyone will have access to canola as kind of a beta release where they can try the models. We'll pay for some lab validation everywhere. And that's where we get the huge jump of, actually having on ground data. Yeah, we have a bit of a video there going through the whole kind of process around it. Yeah, so we're going to change the way we're doing kind of releases and doing it a bit more gradually per model, per nutrient, per region. But we're looking for folks who are, within canola to start testing it out, getting more data, getting field data out there. And we'd love any, leads or introductions there. Yeah, and we'll probably do the same with other crops. So within onions, we already have a couple larger onion growers that are interested in taking samples, contributing to the data set, within their own operation. So we just need to finish up the models before the season here starts. Yeah, and we should have data in the next couple weeks. Just had to, reorganize a bit of the data there. Take us at the water here if there's any questions.
Xavier, is there anything on the radar for making a robot take the samples?
I actually have a question on that later on. I'd have a slight update for you, but nothing concrete, unfortunately.
It's tricky, right? Because you got to pull the leaves off and put them in
Yeah.
the lens, right? But
exactly. So, what we're really focusing on, and I have an image right here. With the lens, of course, you if you haven't seen it, it's kind of like a little suitcase with a bunch of optics in it, and we do direct on leaf, on light source, closed environment, directly on the leaf tissue. We're trying to bridge the gap between doing chemical tests in a laboratory and, the robot, the drone and everything. You can get an NVDI, you can get maybe, a nitrogen assessment, but you can't do this type of detailed nutrient analysis. So our first step is going from, the lab to a scout with a pro being able to do it on field. And then there's folks in this call that can maybe help us as we get towards kind of doing it automatically. It's more of a mechatronics challenge. There's 2 ways of going about it. If you're going about it the data way, to put a hyperspectral camera, leverage all the detailed tissue analysis we've done, that's more of a research project. So I don't know if that'll work or not, honestly, just because there's so much noise, so much illumination. Folks have tried it quite a bit to, put a hyperspectral camera on a tractor and see what data you can get. You can get good data, but you can't do boron, for example. You can't do sulfur manganese. If you have colorosis, it could be 5 different deficiencies. Hard to tell without doing right now chemical tests or what we're developing here. So the other project, the other way of approaching it would be when we get direct leaf analysis like this with robotics. A couple of different mechanisms there, but all things we're interested in, but we're not like robotics engineers. So it's either we go right at the data side of doing like a hyperspectral, or the robotic side of just doing exactly what the lens does, but automated. Or is there any more ideas? This would be a good group.
I just always wonder with stuff like this, like, your customers right now are what? Growers and agronomists.
No, it's agronomists mostly, like
Agronomists
for yeah,
mostly, right? And then whereas potentially if it can fit into some kind of like robotic automation, then all of a sudden maybe whoever's developing some robotic tech to go out there. Like I think I say Upside Robotics, for example.
yeah, absolutely. I saw, yeah, and it was here as well. We were in the CTA program, the Canadian Technology Accelerator, down in Guadalajara. We're in Guadalajara. I think she flew back. She might be in this group today, but we're talking today. And actually, one of the um, kind of announcements I wanted to share would be that we're partnering with the Foresight Canada. So they had a collaboration with the Ontario Soil Network. Very relevant to this group, but they're doing a grant for next generation nitrogen, both fertilizer efficiency, which we were able to pitch for, got accepted towards, and we'll be dedicating more systems to Ontario farms. And part of that will be looking exactly at how can we take a step to automate the solution, especially with folks that can also do the application of fertilizer. So we have a couple sites kind of lined up, which we're looking towards. One of them has kind of a specialty for not special, but like a custom drone application side of their business. They're already looking to, apply nutrients and products via drones with variable rate. So how can, if we add the lens to the system, if you can get a detailed picture of all the crop needs, how does that improve the fertilizer efficiency? And you can read more about it here. Put it on the picture of the lens here. But another side there would be potentially with Upside Robotics. We got to confirm it, of course. This was just done a couple weeks ago, but we'll be able to kind of get the equipment there. And we had some good conversations on, how could this work? So either from a drone or from one of those in-row sprayers, how can we kind of close the loop of sensing the crop need, diagnosticing exactly what product to apply, and then precisely applying it. I think I'd also like a site with just like a conventional sprayer as well. So if we have the robotics angle, high-tech new device, we have the drones, a bit more well understood, and then sprayer ideally with variable rate. How does this kind of information help the process? So that's one thing I wanted to mention today. And then for the actual like robotic solution, like the lens is pretty simple in terms of the hardware. We're just taking expensive optics, expensive spectrometers, and just taking as many samples as possible and building AI models for it. We are super open to anyone who can help automate that, and maybe even use the models. So be a step towards it. So I'm hoping to have 2 to 3 sites for this project. We're still going through kind of the processing of it, but another part of it will be working with the Ontario Soil Network and doing kind of demonstration samples with Ontario farmers around. So if you have acres and would like to get some tissue tests done in the summer, I think we can easily organize, a couple of visits, or at an event, maybe we can do a pop-up where farmers can bring in samples and we can do it right on site. That'll also be part of it, just promotion of the system and of more efficient nutrient use. So it'd probably be focused mostly on corn, because we'd be looking more at the impact rather than adding a new crop, and also continuing our work with the University of Guelph or adding more horticulture crops. So separate project kind of resumes the research project we had going on in Ontario. How are we doing on time? I feel like I've been talking forever.
Sorry, I muted myself.
Yeah.
Time, we're getting near the end.
All right, I'd have 2 quick updates to wrap up with.
Perfect.
Yeah. So I just wanted, this was actually, we released this last summer, but it kind of went somewhat unnoticed. But part of this whole system is not just getting an absolute value of like, hey, you have 2% nitrogen on your corn. Want to go a step beyond that and be able to do custom critical levels. So this is actually live within the platform today, where you can take your best performing fields. You can read more about it here, but you can take your best performing fields and make your own custom critical levels. So within the platform, we kind of have our default values for recommendations. So if you want to have kind of for corn, for V6, V4, all the different stages, what are the recommended amount of each nutrient? Talking to more and more agronomists, kind of realize that these critical levels are good, but they're pretty generic, and most of them are developed kind of within this like 70s is what I've heard. So like they looked at kind of isolating the plant within a greenhouse. What are the needs? What we realized talking to folks is that different varieties now of different needs, different regions react better. And most agronomists kind of do the work of having their own special recommendations anyways. So we wanted to build a system in platform that as a farmer, if you have an agronomist going out taking lead sample, you can switch between, toggle between the generic corn levels, or let's say a critical level from the University of Guelph, or the your local consulting agronomist, or hybrid seed corn, this specific variety in Kitchener, or London, around. Just being able to automatically have those as recommendations for folks, I think it will be a big step towards making fertilizer application more specific. So this is a step towards us not just giving an absolute number, but also helping agronomists be more precise in terms of what they're recommended. And like even doing the research, like in horticulture crops now, we're looking at like corn, making the default critical levels for like onions, carrots, and celery, and you dig into it, and sometimes you even just get like a sufficiency value for the nutrient for like the whole crop's life cycle, which is kind of disappointing. Like there's clearly different needs at different stages. There's clearly tons of opportunity to be more specific, but half of agronomy is communication on with the grower on what to do. So that's why we kind of lean more into having agronomists being able to make their own critical levels for each crop. So we'll have the default generic ones, but this is a feature that we'll look to leverage with the next gen nitrogen challenge, as well as just overall. And we're also working on adding a feature for like notes and things to do recommendations. So as an agronomist, you can go in and say, okay, we'll put this many pounds of nitrogen on this side of the field. Just make that process a bit easier as well. Which we're working on. And I guess the last update I have is that we just shipped this system off to Australia, and working with Horticulture Australia on a new crop, avocados, which is kind of out of left field for us, but there's a big need in looking at the micronutrients of the avocado trees, especially when it comes to like fruiting or flowering. And then there's a lot of like micronutrient stuff there. So we're taking a step there. It's kind of like a side project for us, but we'll probably do a little press release for it once it's up and running, and hopefully start working in more crops as we go. That's it. Thank you guys for the patience. I feel like that was a lot. This was like a couple months worth of updates all in one. So yeah,
No, that's great. A lot of great updates and really good progress. Thanks so much for taking the time to share that with us, Xavier. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I had a call to action is if you are in Alberta or Saskatchewan or know someone there that wants canola samples, let me know. We'll connect you guys with the pilots we have there. Then in Ontario, if you want real-time tissue samples this year, we can connect with the Ontario Soil Network and the projects we're doing there. Hopefully include as many acres as possible, as many farmers as possible. So especially with these data results, which we're pretty happy about. Yeah, kind of time to scale it up a little bit.
Perfect. Were there any more questions for Xavier? No, not at the moment. All right. Well, Xavier, thanks again so much for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Alrighty then. With that, we'll head on to the next section of our agenda for today. The 8th, 9th, and 10th this week was the Thunder Bay Soil and Crop Improvement Association Spring Farm Conference. Did anybody from the group here today happen to attend? No? All right. Well, I hope it went well. Today and tomorrow are the Earlton Farm Show. So hopefully next week, if somebody is planning on attending, we can get some updates on how that show went. I believe Barry Potter was going to be going, so hopefully if he's, or actually, I apologize, not next week. Next week, we won't be having a meeting because it's Good Friday. So when I say next week, I mean the next time we meet, which will be on the 25th. So don't try to show up next week. All right, heading on to project updates. A nice little milestone for the group. We have reached over 400 members. So thank you to everybody for your dedicated support on that. It's a really great number to hit. So we're really proud of that. So we're gonna try to keep up the good work, get even more members. We're also beginning to plan our outreach and in-person activities for the working group for this year. So if there's an agricultural or a robotics focused event that you think it would be good that the group should attend, please reach out to myself or Bridget and we can throw it on our radar and take a look and see if we can make it work. Also, we've mentioned in the past, but just an update. So on behalf of Innovation Farms Ontario, the Western Fair District has contracted with the Ontario College of Technology Educators. We're going to be building out a student ag robotics competition. Hopefully, the goal is to launch it in September of this year. This is funded by FCC through the Innovation Farms Ontario program. So we'll be updating the group more. It's just sort of official now. We'll be updating the group more as we learn more. If you have any interest in being involved with that in any sort of way, reach out to Bridget and we'll see what we can do. Bridget, I don't know if you had anything more you want to add onto that.
Nope, that's great, Dan. And I can save our other question for the group to the roundtable. Just if we don't have time, we can push it to 2 weeks from now.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty. We don't have any new funding announcements or opportunities on our list for this week. So nothing for you there. And with that, we'll move us into the roundtable section of the meeting for this week. So Bridget, why don't we start with you? Because I know you've got something.
Yes. So actually, I have two things. I lied. I apologize. So we do actually have one more opportunity to add. It came through earlier this week from Agricultural Adaptation Council. They have a digital marketing boot camp with Jelly Academy. I just threw the link up there for anybody that's interested, and we'll get that on the agenda. But it's for anybody that wants to update their, I think it's content marketing specific for any startups. So just the link there is on the chat. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to Chantel with AAC if she's on the call. I don't think she is.
And just so folks know, the link is also on the agenda.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I might have just sorry about that, Dan.
No, it's all good. Just may as well make sure people know. It's in the conferences, meetings, field tours section.
Okay, so clearly I just missed it. So Thank you. Our other question for the group is we had a discussion this week with somebody that had mentioned that when we do our roundtables as well as our panel type discussions, because we record all of our meetings, that sometimes it's a little awkward, for lack of a better word, to always feel like you can share something because you're not sure if it's the right opportunity for the group, or it's kind of a, sometimes it's a big group to just jump into if you're kind of new to the industry. So we just want to kind of open this up for discussion to see if there is feedback from anybody on if we were to have either not every single meeting, or, once we get to the roundtable section of our meetings where that part of the meeting isn't recorded, so that people feel that they can ask a question, but also, like, if you ask a question that's silly, we're not going to judge you, but then you don't feel like it's there on the internet forever. So just want to throw that out there, see if there was any feedback anybody had. And I will, I see Ian raised his hand, so Ian, you can jump in if you'd like.
So I think that's very respectful of people that are, still trying to keep hold on certain tech and stuff. I think we try and create the environment where people feel comfortable to say, oh, I have something that I'm willing to share with you, but I'd rather have it not recorded, and we just not record, like just turn the recorder off for that short period of time or whatever. I think that would be a good path forward, and people should feel comfortable in this environment to make that call for themselves.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian. Did anybody else have any? I guess apologies. Dan, if you want to just turn the recording off for this part, I guess, but like, is there anyone else that would have an opinion, or did you want to send us a chat? You could do that as well. We just didn't want to make the decision unilaterally without actually mentioning it to people, so. Matt, thank you. Yeah.
Because if you unilaterally say we're not going to record it, then there would be others of us that would say, wow, we'd be interested in the information that people are willing to share, right?
Exactly. And I would say, I don't know how this works because it's AI generated, but we do still take meeting minutes with part of this. So I think as long as it's still okay, we could probably still have a discussion from like a meeting minutes from the discussion, but then it's not like Bridget says something silly and it's out there forever.
I guess two things that come to mind. One is like that for that AI meeting minutes generator. Maybe you already did this, but making sure that it's like one that's not used to feed its learning potentially, so it's like kind of closed. And then another one I think that might help with the discussion is like some like directed questions to kind of prompt a discussion. If there is no one who's like immediately raising their hand, maybe like previous, like once in a while someone will ask that question and then there's a good discussion after that. But yeah, some kind of question might help facilitate more discussion too.
Definitely, yeah, we can put together some kind of generic questions and then kind of throw it out to see if there's anyone else that has things that they want to include. All right. So I guess if there is anyone else that has an opinion that doesn't want to share it on the call, I think moving forward from what we've kind of roughly heard, we probably will look at having the roundtable part of the meetings not be recorded, and we'll kind of advertise that in advance. So we still will have all the presentations and all that posted. But if you have strong reservations the other way and you haven't had a chance to say that, please just email myself or Dan, let us know before next meeting, because I think otherwise we will move forward with that. So we want as much as possible, as much collaboration and communication on these calls. Excellent. Okay, Dan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, we're still on the round table, so if anyone has anything they'd like to bring up, discuss, questions, thoughts, queries.
Well, there was somebody looking for technical information on RTK. You guys want to talk about that?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's Juliana from Agriculture Canada. No, I had this kind of indirect inquiry from one of my researchers about RTK base stations and using that in areas of poor cell coverage. So I realized that my personal knowledge of RTK isn't that great. So I did a little bit of research, and this particular inquiry put some information in that in Australia and France, for example, they have publicly funded networks that are available to agricultural producers. But in Canada, it's kind of a mix of public and private networks. So I'm just trying to improve my basic understanding of how these systems work, how much do they cost for a producer, is the accuracy there, because we're talking in terms of systems with 10 to 15 centimeters of accuracy. So it's more general knowledge that I'm trying to gather at this point. So I've got a couple of contacts there, so I can start with them. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're talking to my wheelhouse. So I'm spent the last 25 years in sales selling GNSS receivers. So
Okay.
you've got my email address. We can take it offline and you can
Sure.
I've got
Yeah,
a bunch of material I can share with you.
Great. I'll be in touch. Thanks very much.
Yep.
Just for my own knowledge, because I'm not the most tech savvy person, is the RTK, the fact that it's not like openly available, something that is a holdback to producers? Like, is it something we should have a discussion on or a presentation on at a later date?
So RTK is pretty prevalent in most growing regions in the world. It was correct statement. Some of it's private, some of it is public access. In the United States, there's a lot of the Department of Transportations have set up RTK networks for the entire state. They're public access because they're publicly funded. They work great when they work, but because they're publicly funded and the DOT gets priority for them, farmers sometimes don't get access to them when they need them. So that brings in some benefits to the private networks, and farmers sometimes are willing to pay for that access. There are alternatives to RTK as well that are just as accurate, just as precise. They are typically private services, again, satellite delivered corrections that will improve the performance of the GPS down to that centimeter level accuracy, just like RTK. But again, it's a private subscription-based service that farmers are typically looking to pay for. Adoption in that area is very high. We do find a lot of traction in that. So as I said, there's lots of options. If it's something that this working group wants to learn more about, I'd be happy to put on a presentation in the future.
Thanks, Colin.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just writing that down.
I'm on the hook now, aren't I?
It might be. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, we got just a couple minutes left. Any other last minute thoughts or feelings? No? All right. We do have some new articles from the industry. Excuse me, at the bottom of our agenda, so please do check those out. I'll send out an email next week reminding folks that there is no meeting on Friday next week due to the holiday. But yeah, just remember here, don't wake up early on Friday to be here next week, because we won't be. All right, thanks again to Xavier for coming on and giving us those updates. We appreciate it. Everybody have themselves a great weekend, and we will reconvene in 2 weeks' time on the 25th.
Thanks, Dan. You too.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye all. Have a great weekend.